Hi Year 11, a quick Eltham video for you on a timeline of the site. It's a bit of an old piece of paper now, it's what I did at Easter in school, but I found it helpful, and sorry I've got a bad cold, but hopefully what I say will make some sense. I've crossed off the beginning of the timeline because although we know the site existed back in 1086 because it's mentioned in the Domesday Book, Bishop Odo, we don't know much more about it. So as far as we're concerned, the site starts in 1295 when Bishop Beck, the Archbishop of Durham, gets the site. He builds a great hall. He sets up a hunting park for hunting deer. He's obviously in the business of welcoming, entertaining, being hospitable to important people in the country, including the man who becomes king in 1307, who is Edward II. When Beck dies in 1311, he gives it in his will to Edward. Edward's a really good person to be clear on in the story of Eltham because he's the man who was married to Isabella of France, and she's the woman who had the massive party when he died because she'd basically arranged it. You know, the banquet and the people who killed him were given the silver, all of that sort of thing. We've then got future medieval monarchs using Eltham. It's close to the River Thames, easy access to London. We've got Henry IV, who's around at the end of the 1300s, end of the 14th century, into the 15th, that kind of time. He spends, 10 of his 13 Christmases at Eltham, so it's doing really well, hence the 9 out of 10 rating. Edward IV is important, so we've got Edward II, the first royal owner. We've got Edward IV. He, between 1465, rebuilds the Great Hall, makes a new Great Hall, the Great Hall that we still see today, alright? With the hammer beam roof, with a 31 metres by 11 metres, all of that. But Eltham's doing well. Eltham continues to do well into the early Tudors, into the start of the early modern period, as we call it. We know that because Henry VIII builds a massive new chapel that's now under the turning circle. We know that because we know before he was king, as a boy, he spent a lot of time at Eltham. But as the Tudors go on, so later in the 1500s, later in the 16th century, the Tudors visit it less and less. Hampton Court has become more important, located on the River Thames in West London and grander. There's also Greenwich Palace, kind of just down the road from Eltham, but closer to the river. And James I, who becomes monarch in 1603, so he's the first Stuart, he finds it far in decay. After that, I think James's son Charles is Charles I is the last monarch to visit Eltham. We have a long period of time where Eltham becomes less and less significant. So it's sold, interestingly I think, I'm not sure I've talked about this enough before, it's sold to Colonel Rich, kind of in the aftermath of the Civil War, 1651. He's on the Parliament side, so it's out of the royal family. It's gets taken over by the Shaw family. It's used as a farm, as you know. The Great Hall used as a barn. We've got artists like Turner, J.W.W. Turner, very famous artist, comes and visits and paints it. So it's kind of interesting for a few people, but not really that important for a long time, and no repairs being done to sort of the rest of the palace, what used to be there. Obviously that all changes in the 20th century. The courthouse get it in 33, it's ready in 36, following the designs of Sealy and Paget. Remember how controversial those plans were? One of the most famous quotes about it said it looked like an unfortunately sited cigarette factory, which is just posh people's way of being insulting, really, alright? It just looks like a factory and it's all in the wrong place. What on earth are you doing putting an Art Deco house next to this royal palace from previous times? The courthouse didn't stay, so because, the courthouse is useful for the courthouse for the same reason it was useful to the royal family. It's near to London but not in London, all of that kind of thing. Courthouse don't stay because of the war, basically. It's acquired by the army. The army use it as the centre of their education. Because it's owned by the army, then it's a target for the IRA, the Irish terrorist group that wants freedom from the British and is particularly against the army because the British army was in Northern Ireland trying to enforce British rule in Northern Ireland in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. So bombed in 1990 by the IRA. People aren't hurt, but it's a significant moment. And then acquired in 1995 by English Heritage, and so that's when you would see the developments like the cafe, like the playground, etc. coming there. So a really mixed story. The glories of medieval times, 9 out of 10, going down and down and down, and then recovery under the court holds, perhaps, an interesting location, very famous in the art world place. And now, it depends on your point of view, clearly, but it's a well-known site. People can choose to get married there, music videos there, the Wonka scene from Wonka, the film, filmed there, and so on. So it's become much more well-known again now. Hope that's helpful. Sorry for the germs. Thanks very much.